Thank you all for checking out this week's episode. Once again, I'm John. If you like what you heard and saw today, subscribe to our YouTube channel, find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and check out our brand new merch store with hats, coffee mugs, t-shirts, other cool stuff coming down the pipeline. Again, thank you all for support. Be safe, and see you next week.
How's it going, everyone? John here, the host of Spirit Talk, and today I get to welcome another stunt legend in the field of movies and television. Mr. William Perry's here today. Some of his work can be seen in the films Nightmare on Elm Street 3, 4, and 6, The People Under the Stairs, Home Alone 2, The Lost Boys, Monster Squad, Predator 2, Return of the Living Dead 2, various television shows. He's also the author of By His Hand, a novella, and he also toured in 1992 with the legendary Michael Jackson on the Dangerous Tour. It's great to finally have you on here, William.
Oh, it's so great to be here. I enjoy your show, and so the chance to be on here was absolutely
I've had the privilege of having some great stuntmen on the show and stunt women, Margene Holden, mutual friend Lee Waddell, Ken Herzinger. A lot of these people I have on here because I think, at least my podcast, every time I watch a movie or a television show, yeah, you watch it for the actor, I guess, if it's a famous actor or like an action star, you're like, I'm gonna watch this Bruce Willis film. But as I've gotten older, I've gravitated towards the people that go behind the scenes, and I love the stuntmen and women that do some of the stuff. But it's like, at first, I'm like, there's no way The Rock is doing this, and then you get to realize he's had the same Tannoy as his stuntman, his obviously relative. But the hardships they go through, the men and women that actually do the stunts, and it's like to actually get to talk to these men and women now, it's super fascinating because you learn so much behind the scenes. And again, it's great to have you on here.
it's great to be here. Movies and television have been a big part of my growing up, and so I feel the same way as I would watch these things. Um, there was always I was an actor as a kid and wanted to get into that professionally, and I would find myself wondering how they did that. How did they get there? How did they, how did this actor get to this spot in that filming moment? How did they do that? And how does all of this come together? And the fascination just became after a while. It's like I want to do this, and everybody tells you not to. I read books that told me not to do it, you know. But if it's something where it's just like I can't imagine doing anything else there,
Right.
what am I supposed to do?
Right.
You know,
And like
it's
for me,
complex.
like I would watch these old clips of like Evil Knievel and be like, this is one guy doing this thing. But when you watch the movies and television shows like the Dukes of Hazzard or Bullet, all these older movies before CGI, I that the actor's not doing this stuff, but you have a human being, another human being that possibly might look like this person doing these crazy stunts for this person to look cool and get the shot that the director's looking for. It's kind of talk me through that. Like, how do you kind of fall into the world of stunt work? I mean, obviously you've dabbled obviously in front of the camera as well, which you want to talk about in Predator 2, but stuff like that where it's like what gravitates you towards to do kind of do the crazy kind of stunt work.
That's funny because I have a very different story from most of the guys I know that did this. Most of the guys I know that got into stunts, it was their goal from the very beginning. Myself, I wanted to be an actor, and I'm a little tiny guy, way tinier even back then, maybe about 5'6", 125 pounds. So I'm you know the size of a 14-year-old girl, and so I was trying to get work as an actor, and I was struggling because they'd say, "Well, you're pretty short." And of course, everybody will come back with, "Yeah, but what about Tom Cruise? What about Michael J. Fox? What about all these people that are not
Right.
really very tall?" Um, but a lot of the women that were the leads at the time were all 5'10", 5'9", 5'10", and so unless you are just this absolute box office draw, they're not really going to put you in with them if they don't, if there's no just driving reason to do so. And so I was struggling with that. And then one day, Tony Caesar, who's a common friend of Lee Waddell's, and Lee and I have been friends for many years, he said, "I got this kid. He's on this show. He's your height. He's your weight, skin color, eye color. I mean, you're a great double for this kid. Would you want to do a stunt?" And I was like, "Will I get my union card?" Yeah, you will. But I'd already just about gotten it about that time. And he said, "Well, here you go." And so it was a very lackluster stunt, actually for Wes Craven, so the first person I ever worked for was Wes Craven and Tony Caesar. And he said to me, "Do you have any, were you an athlete at all?" And I said, well, I was a martial artist for many years. My brother's a ninth degree black belt, and so we came up together doing that, and skateboarding and motorcycles and kind of a lot of, I won't say extreme sports, but certainly action oriented kind of
Right.
stuff that blended well. And he said, can you take a hit? And I thought, well, I've tried getting kicked in the ribs by my brother. Yeah, that's about as like getting hit by a truck. So I thought, yeah, and I know how to land and I hit the ground and I know how to roll out of it instead of, just flapping to the ground. And so he said, there's a lot of work for a guy your height and weight. And like, all right, well, that seems okay. And so he just started hiring me. He and other guys, he started passing my name around because if you were a big, tall stunt man that was going to double, you know, Bruce Willis, there were about 100 guys, maybe
Yep.
200 guys all ready for that job. But if it was a kid, maybe five. So my competitive landscape was much more reduced. And most of the guys that were stunt guys that were my size were ex gymnasts. So they'd have big old thick arms and, you know,
Yeah.
my wide shoulders and, all that. And I didn't have that. So I actually did double girls. I doubled, 15 to 18-year-old kids, boys. And so because I didn't have the big arms, I could really make a very effective double for some of these guys.
Right.
And if I could hit the ground pretty hard, and walk away pretty well. And for me, it was like, oh my God, no more auditions. Oh,
Right.
no more waiting, no more kissing butt. I mean, well, at least not as much, but it was just a very different world. And,
Yeah.
we joke about when you say you're an actor, they go, really, what restaurant? And then you tell them you're a stuntman and they're like, oh, yeah. so,
Right.
so there was
Well,
a lot of positives to it. And I liked the work, it was much more, um, you had your own destiny in your hands a lot
right.
more. You could go out and hustle stunt coordinators and say, "Hey, I'm Bill Perry. I want to come to work for you," and they're like, give me your picture and resume. I'll see if something comes up."
Right.
And eventually you'd get some work out of that, or friends would refer you. And I worked a lot more than almost any actor I know, uh, and I just because of my size and weight, and I think my good disposition, work just started happening. And it was kind of frustrating to people who wanted to be stuntman because they're like,
How are
how
you
do
getting
I
all
get
this work?
past it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it's like I've been down here for 3 years in California, busting my ass, and I got nothing. You got a stunt coordinating job in your first year. What the hell's going on in this world? And I, right place, right time.
I'm glad
Yeah,
you cleared that part up because when I saw you stunted for Lori Petty in Bates
yeah,
Motel, I was just like, is this the same guy? Because now it makes sense based on the size and how she's built and
yeah.
everything. It's pretty rad. It's pretty
And it
cool.
was about the haircut too. Back in the day, Lori Petty had very short hair,
Yeah.
just as her style. And when they would bring out stunt girls, they're like, "Well, I'm not going to cut my hair just for a couple of days because that's going to eliminate my ability to get other work." So, because I had similar hairstyle, and I actually fooled her mom when we were filming. Her mom happened to be there, and she comes up behind me, not just seeing I'm in full makeup, and she goes, "Lori," I go, "Hi, mom," and just watched her lose her crap. She's like, "Jesus, you make a good double." I'm like, "Yeah," and she's like, "Wow, that's crazy." And that was fun. To me, I didn't care. Anytime I was on set, I was the happiest little puppy dog ever. And so, there's no shame in doubling
Right.
anybody. Any work was good work. And she was a nice person, and it was a fun little shoot.
You when you mentioned Wes Craven and obviously people like Tony, other stunt people in your field, how important is it to have that kind of create that relationship where they trust you to do the job? And I mean, ultimately, how you act to hold yourself accountable in public and what you do is that's basically that's your resume that everyone's going to see in real time. It's like how vital is that for actors or stunt people coming up today, where it's like to kind of realize that hey, if you do a good job and surround yourself with the right people that you're in this industry is it could work out for you.
Yeah, I mean, integrity is so important. Gratitude, is a huge deal. I remember working on a show, and there was another guy who I was very competitive with because we were both the same height, the same weight, and so we would kind of tangle out there trying to get work. And he was very unpleasant on the set one day, and I just wasn't having it. I just wasn't going to involve myself with it. I just kept smiling, kept doing my job, and when he would say something nasty, I would say something nice.
Yeah.
And that was just my way. Like I said, I'm on the set. I'm getting to do a job people would give their right arm to do, and I'm on the set having a great time doing what I want to do, living out my childhood dream of being in movies. So how am I going to have a bad day, right? You know. And as it turned out, about 6 months later, I got this call, and this woman that I met on set, her boyfriend was a stunt coordinator for Home Alone 2. And she said, there's two people I could hire for this job, you and this other gentleman. And she said, but he was so unpleasant to work with so much of the time. And he sat on the set just hassling you, just trying to make you look bad. And you would not take the bait. You wouldn't
Yep.
join in. In fact, you complimented him on the great job he had done. And she said, I said to my boyfriend, if we get anything else to work on, I want to hire that guy because he's just eager to work and he's friendly and he just won't be unpleasant no matter
Right.
what the circumstance.
Yeah.
And like it wasn't about my abilities. My abilities were fair at best. I mean, I think anybody who knows my work would go, good, not great. I wasn't going to do, 100-foot high falls. There was a lot of stunts I just wasn't really capable of doing. I wasn't asked to do them most of the time either. But the reason people hire you in this business is because of your work ethic, your preparation, your attitude, and your just professionalism. The skills are kind of guaranteed. Everybody thinks everybody can. When you go into a hair salon, you don't assume that this person is this the first haircut that they've done. You assume that they're working in a salon. They know what they're doing.
Right.
And so that's kind of the same way with stunts. When you walk into that office for that stunt coordinator, or you go up and talk to him, he's got the general assumption that you can do the work. What makes the decision as to whether you get the work is that attitude and that
Yeah.
friendliness and professionalism. So that's a big deal.
Working with Wes Craven, I mean, talk about a legendary filmmaker, a human being, and every person I've had on the podcast, from stuntmen to actors, whoever, anytime they got a chance to work with him, it's always been a highlight in their career. It's like for you to do, I mean, some of the films like you've been a part of, like The People Under the Stairs and stuff, where it's like it's such, for all that creativity to come out of one, for his mind like that, create these stories and craft these whatever crazy ideas, for you to be able to play in his world like that as much as you have, I mean, it has to be surreal looking back at it.
And I actually had an extra bonus on that in that when I decided it was time to kind of hang up my cleats and get out of doing stunts, I started doing websites. Um, and had done a business website with Tony Caesar, who was Wes's um,
Yes.
stunt coordinator for 18 films and great, close friend. And he said, "Hey, Wes Craven wants a website." And I said, "Oh, I'm building websites." And he's like, "Yeah, so I'm going to refer you to him, but don't tell him, about your past because he doesn't want an actor. He wants a web developer." And so Wes didn't remember me, even though we'd worked on 3 shows together, because I was always in some sort of makeup that made me look like somebody else. And so when I got to do the site for him, he basically turned to me and said, I don't want the walls dripping with blood. Okay. Because I want to be able to do other kinds of,
Yeah.
projects. So he said, but do what you think is right. Just let yourself go creative, just do your best work. And I owe him so much for that because shortly after that, I had just gotten my start in web development, and I would call him maybe once every couple of weeks, and I'd say, "Hey, what's going on in your world?" And he'd tell me, and I would write it, and I would design new graphics and new fun stuff for the website to try to make it fun and cool and as cutting edge as I was capable of. And People Magazine happened to see the site and said, "Ooh, this is one of those sites to see." And I started getting calls
That's
and people were
awesome.
like, "We want you to be our new web developer." And I went from making like $29,000 a year to nearly $100,000 a year in the same year.
Yep.
And it was because this guy just said, "Go crazy! I want to know what you can do.
Yeah.
Show me your best work." And so I owe Wes Craven for 2 major career pivots in my life. He gave me my first stunt job working on a Disney TV show. And then he gave me this opportunity to build his website, which really changed my world again, helped me to really get a fast track to much better work and much, more lucrative
Right.
work. So, but he was, I mean, I won't go against anything anybody told you because it's not true. He was the sweetest guy,
Yeah.
very funny, deeply funny. One of those sense of humors where he says something and you're like, is he being funny? I don't want to insult the guy, but that sounds hilarious. Did he mean to say it that way? And then you'd get the sense after a while that, oh yeah, he's always working under the surface. Um, Very charming, very intelligent, and a great guy to work with just because his joy in his work
Right.
was clear.
Right.
You spend time trying to make a movie. It may take you a year in development, maybe even longer, to make the movie that you want to make, and then you shoot it in 9 weeks, if you're lucky to get that much amount of time. And so that time is the time that you really enjoy. You spend a year setting it up, and then you get a couple of months to enjoy it. And Wes just really, in my experience with him, always seemed to be just joyous in his enjoyment of the macabre craziness and the
Right.
gore and the ability to craft a good scare
Right.
or a funny moment. He just really dug it. And it's not like he was some trained filmmaker. He came up from as being an editor and actually just delivering film stock back and forth to different locations. That's how he got his start, and then he became a dominant force in movies.
Right.
Who can do that?
Not many.
Yeah, yeah. You got to have a certain level of drive and intelligence.
Is
you
it
know
difficult to do your job when you're stunting if you're covering doing stunts for someone that you didn't get along with? Like, how did that work? Where maybe you thought this actor, or the perceived notion was this actor is a pain in the ass to work with. When you get there, you're like, well, maybe it was just the person they were working with that day that was an issue, or like, does it make it difficult your job, or can you just be laser focused and just do the work?
my I would say pretty well laser focused. I mean, I liked working with the actors when I could. Again, I always believed myself to be an actor, and I still do some theater here and there and just have some fun with it. Not trying to make any money at it, not trying to make a living at it, just do it because it's what I do. And so I very much related to them, and so I would work with them as best I could to understand um, how they what they were thinking when this moment happened. So if it's a Nightmare on Elm Street movie, the kid's asleep, he's in disbelief, he's terrified that Freddy's here and I got to go up against Freddy. And so I would talk to him about how do you approach this? Are you confident? Are you terrified? Are you what's going on in your mind? And then I would talk to him about the physical actions we were about to do, and I'd say, okay, so when I hit the ground, I landed like this and I rolled like this, so that if they needed to do some continuity work where they were going to say, okay, when Bill hit the ground, he hit
Right.
flat.
Right.
So when that actor gets up and he's kind of taking over from after the stunt or before the stunt, we want to make sure that the setups were correct and that there was a fluidity to it so that you wouldn't know it was me. Anytime you watch any of my work, if you can tell it's me, I didn't do very well, or somebody didn't do, or the editor didn't do a great job. If it looks like it's the actor, I've done my job.
Right.
Um, so for the most part, I don't think I ever really worked with any actors that I felt were like blatantly unprofessional or weren't concerned with getting it right.
Right.
The stunt person is sometimes a pain in the ass to the actor because the actor wants everybody to believe that they did it. That's just like, oh yeah, action stars. But I think most people know that there's stunt people behind all this stuff. But it's my job to make the actor look good.
Yeah.
And if I do a stunt and I don't sell it, and the actor doesn't look good, then that's a bad thing. And then the actors are more grumpy with me than me being with them. I
Right.
just want to make film as good as I can make it. They may be concerned that I made them look a little wussy, or I didn't smack to the ground as hard as they dreamt they would. All right, well, if we can get a chance to do it again, we'll make it right.
Right. Uh, One of my first movies I ever bought on VHS was Predator 2, and I love the first film, and I love the second one because it's so different. Danny Glover, it's just a different atmosphere, the jungle of LA, right? And one
Yeah.
of my favorite scenes growing up was the subway scene where your character in front of the camera playing this gang leader, surrounded by people that look like they would have killed you had you even talked back to him and told him to do something. But the scene is so cool because you have the Bill Paxton and all those the cops coming after you, and then you're in the middle of this little kind of hijacking type thing. But you played the character so believable, and it made like what was that experience like? Because it's when you first see it, if it was a silent film, you'd be like, "There's no way this guy's a gang leader." But I think the way, but I think the way you ooze so much like the cool factor because you knew you had your big dogs behind you, made that scene like seem so like, yes, it was scary and it was violent, but it was also very funny.
Yeah, it's so funny that you mentioned that. When we went in for the audition, they said, "Yeah, we're looking for stunt people who can act." And so I go in the door, and the guy that's in the film who says, "Bet mine's bigger than yours," a gentleman named Alex, and he and I auditioned together. And I walk through the door, and I look at this guy, and he's got tattoos of flies and in spider webs all over. He's got this weird birthmark on his head, so this huge tuft of white hair comes growing out of it. He's got a nose that looks like it's been broken several thousand times. He's just this crazy looking dude, and he's hilarious and he's funny and he's a pretty good actor. He did Lost Boys and a handful of other things too. And so we go in and they said, okay, one of you is the gang leader and one of you is the crony. Well, clearly I'm the
Yeah,
crony because he's the big guy, but I am his preppy look. In the day, I looked like a little, you know, Ralph Lauren ad. I was cute and preppy and color up and all that kind of stuff. So I walked through the door going, "Oh, this is horrible. I'm not going to get this part," and I really wanted the part. So I did my best with it, and they said, and Stephen Hopkins, who I didn't know Stephen Hopkins at the time, was actually in the room, the director, and he said, "Okay, switch parts." And I swear, all I thought was, "This is awesome. They really want Alex.
yeah,
They want to see what Alex can do." And so, as an actor, I totally focused on Alex. I'm going to make sure Alex gets this job because my chance of getting this job is pretty much zero. I don't look right. I don't sound right. Ain't going to happen. But I'm going to make sure Alex gets it. And so I really played up, and they're laughing and they're having such a good time. And so they said, "Hey, great guys, love you. We'll talk to you." So I let it go. And about 2 weeks later, I get this call and it says, "Hey, this is, casting agency. We want you for the gang leader." And I was like, "I'm so sorry. You called the wrong guy." And they said, "What do you mean?" I said, I was the little guy. You're thinking about Alex." And they said, "No, no, we want you." I'm like, "Little guy, right? 5'6". They said,
preppy.
"Yeah, the
Yeah,
idea of you ordering around these monkeys, these humongous guys, was just hilarious. It was the funniest thing we'd seen in any of the auditions, and you just owned it." It's like, wow. And it was a major life lesson, uh, humongous, best life lesson in many years. As an actor, don't worry about you. Listen to
yeah,
the other guy.
yeah.
Make sure that you are as attuned to the other actor in the scene. Don't worry about selling yourself. You'll sell yourself if you do it right. And I wish I'd learned it a lot earlier in my career. Frankly, I had a lot of great auditions I should have got, but that was a big deal. And so when we got to do it, there's a story that's actually gotten out on the web about me meeting Bill Paxton, and I was sitting in his chair, and he says, "Your name Bill?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm Bill Perry." And he's like, "Oh, hey." He says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm a gang member." And I was kind of,
Yeah.
a little embarrassed. And he's like, "Did you ever see Terminator?" Of
Uh-huh.
course, we all saw Terminator. Who didn't see Terminator, right?
Right.
He goes, "That was like my first big role, you know." And I was like, "God, that's crazy." And he said, "I started out as a gang member. This is the best day in the whole world, Bill." He's like, This is your chance, man. You're gonna be 40 foot across in theaters all across America.
Yeah.
And you don't get this day again. This day happens one time. This is the day that your career absolutely just blossoms. And don't let this day go by too soon. Don't let it go by too fast. Don't be so nervous that you can't enjoy it. Just relax and let it happen and do your best work."
Awesome.
And I remember that to this day. And it's one of my favorite stories in my entire career because here was a guy who was definitely a star by this time
Oh
and
yeah.
certainly bigger, much bigger and even better things. And he took his time to help some schmuck that looked very nervous, I'm sure, and didn't feel, that his part was so important, and made me feel like $1 million.
Yep.
It made me feel like I belonged there, and made me feel like I could do my best work today. And I remember that day so vividly because of what he did. And he didn't have to do that, you know. And that was another thing. It's another a big life lesson. You're never too big to make somebody else feel, you know, like they're an equal.
Yeah.
And making me feel like an equal changed my whole demeanor. And I think I did do, you know, my best work that day because I was so comfortable, you know. And he made that happen. And I've had other actors do that. Jennifer Garner was very similar on Alias. Just said, "Hey, I just want you to do your best work today. Whatever it is you're doing for us today. If you have any problems, you have any concerns, you don't feel like something's safe, you don't feel like you understand, you stop down and say, Jennifer told me to ask."
Yeah.
You
It's
know,
awesome.
like, you know, wow. You know, how cool is it that the big star, and I mean the big star, is taking time out for, you know, each and every person on the set. And again, big life lesson. You know, that's a that you can be that person, or you can be a total pain in the ass and a diva. But who are you going to get the best work out of people by
Yeah,
being a
probably
diva?
not.
You know, probably not. So
The
yeah, just those great things.
one of my other guilty pleasures, Return of the Living Dead Part Two. And for you to obviously with a sequel, you always try to up the stunts, and it's always
Yeah.
difficult to make it seem more action packed, right? But for playing like an undead, like a zombie character, you get to create or be part of two or three memorable stunts in that film, playing this bully, this real douche of a guy.
Yeah.
But with the screwdriver stunt, the falling stunt, electrocution. So how fun is it for you to kind of get to do three like big stunts with one character in a film
Well,
like that?
and I got to do more because once you're on a film, it's kind of like if you've already got a contract and they've got you there for the week or however long, they'll use you in any way they can if they can. So I was also a utility zombie.
Oh, it's awesome.
So, not a word you get to say in all the time. But so there were other stunts we got to do too. But the fun thing about that, I've it's in most movies, your character gets killed and well, you're done. Hey man, thanks. You know, we'll
Yeah,
see
see
you
ya.
next time. But as a zombie, you don't have to die. You know, you're already dead. So in that movie, yeah, I got the screwdriver in the mouth. I fell from the catwalk, got electrocuted, but I also got run over by a meat truck. Which, one of my more memorable sort of stunts, I said to the stunt coordinator, because he's driving this truck and I'm looking in the thing, and basically the truck's going to stop here, but you're standing here. So that truck is going to hit you. And I said, can I put my hands up? And he's like, why would you do that? I'm like, to protect myself. He's like, you're a zombie. You're dead. You don't need to protect yourself. You know, you're not afraid of dying. I'm like,
Right.
bomber. So I just had to basically stand there and, you know, just just wait for it and get hit. We had to do it a couple of times. And every time it hit me, it would just blast me. And I would go 10, 15 feet and tumble through the mud down the way as to break my fall. But I just remember thinking, okay, this this is stupid. I mean, you can't even protect yourself. And so I just kind of padded up as best I could because it really was, you know, direct contact with a
Right.
truck, you know. I remember thinking at the time, this has become my life. This is funny. This is, you know, you look at it and you either laugh or you cry or you get, you know, scared. But I just remember thinking, I guess that's what we get to do today. And I remember I was working on another show the day before at night. So I was going from one shot, you know, one gig to the next, and I remember getting about 4 hours of sleep, and I could hardly get that 4 hours because I was so excited about what I got to do the next day. You know, I remember I didn't need coffee, I didn't need anything.
Yeah.
I was so jazzed. It's like I'm working. It's something that was my dream.
Yeah.
And two films at a time, who gets that lucky? You know, um, so I just, you know, it's one of those things where as much as it was, you know, some intense physical stuff, if you were a football player and you went home at night and, you know, you got bruises and you're pretty well banged up and your wife says to you, you know, oh, honey, well, look at you, you're all banged up. It's like, this is the sport.
Yeah.
This is
This
the
is what I
game. You
do.
know, this is the job. Yeah, this is what I do. And a certain amount of uh, getting, you know, beat up is kind of part of the gig. Um, and that didn't bother me. You know, I felt like, I can handle this. You know, I'm reasonably durable. You know, not stupid, but you know, uh, So yeah, doing that movie was so much fun. I just remember thinking, "Oh my gosh, I get to do so much on this film." And every day was just an
Yeah.
absolute joy. It was a very low budget film when we filmed it out in Santa Clarita, California, not on a movie lot. We rented out a big like factory that was empty, and they built the sets in there. And some of the funniest, I mean, some of there's a scene where I get electrocuted and this big transformer falls, and I look at the transformer and I'm like, what is this made out of? And it was made out of cheeseburger boxes that they had put together like this and then run wires through it. It's like, I thought it was real when I first saw it, but when I got there and I found out actually, no, that's not real. That's little styrofoam containers for McDonald's
In that big
cheeseburgers.
like end scene with like the electricity coming through and zapping everyone, there's that little quick scene of like the Michael Jackson throwback with Thriller and the red jacket type thing,
Yeah.
which is now researching you having toured in Europe and stuff in '92 with Michael Jackson. What was that like? Because that
Yeah.
just seems utterly surreal at the height of that madness.
Truly. And you tour with, the rock and roll crowd and you get the sense of what that's like. It's a circus, you
Oh,
know.
yeah, but
It
'92 with
really
Michael Jackson. I mean, you are you're in a rocket
big.
ship that's probably still coming down.
Yeah, the biggest tour of its time.
Yep.
We had three different full sets. One's in the city we just left, one's in the city we're in, and one's on its way to the next city we're going to because it would take 3-4 days to build at each place, and so we were a traveling city, of semi trucks. And my job in this was very very small. Turns out my buddy Kenny Gibson, who passed away a little bit ago, was he flies this thing called the rocket belt. So at the end of the concert, the job was that we would strap Michael into this rocket belt and he would fly out of the stadium. Well, there was a little magic trick that we did. David Copperfield designed for him that would give us that ability to swap them out. So they switch places, and uh, Michael, goes. He gets actually sort of shuffled off the stage, and Kenny flies the rocket. And so my job was just to strap him in and sell the trick.
Yep.
The stunt that is involved there was more about Kenny doing the stunt. I was just more his safety guy. But we traveled around for months all across Europe and staying in great hotels. I mean, the same hotels Michael was in, and the dancers were wonderful, kind folks, and very friendly and very, uh, uh, you know, just great artists. The musicians, the best musicians you could buy at the time.
Yeah.
Jennifer Batten on guitar. Oh my God! As a guitar player, I would watch her just fluidly, effortlessly play each night, and I would watch the show from either backstage or I would actually put a lawn chair between the barricades and the stage just so I could be 10 feet away in my little lawn chair looking up and watching possibly one of the, well, I mean, really one of the most legendary entertainers of all time
Yep.
just tear it up
Yep.
every single night. And I wasn't a huge fan at the time. But after you see doing one show and you recognize that this man just held 100,000 people in the palm of his hand every night
Yep.
effortlessly, and an amazing performance, so much energy and so much joy in what he did. Uh, yeah, one of those things where my one of my brothers would say to me, "How come you get to live this life? How come you get to do all
Yeah.
these awesome things?" And I'm like, "I'm just willing, I guess. I don't know. I don't want to call it luck because I feel like I worked my ass off, But that particular one, that's one of those things where I look back on it almost like it was somebody else, even though I have all the memories. It's like,
Right.
how lucky was that? How cool was that? I'm no rock star, but I got to play one,
Yeah.
for a few months, traveling to the most beautiful places in Europe on
Yeah, it's
somebody
just
else's dime.
it's such a rush. I guess you now when I go through and do what I do, I always had this misconception that stunt work and people that do all these crazy gags and like crazy like parachute stuff or zip line stuff. It's like, oh, it's only movies and television shows. But now it's like entertainment itself is so like embedded with stunt work with all this crazy stuff. It's like all these professionals have to make these artists look amazing. Like the
Yeah,
guy I know he just passed away, but worked with Pink, and did all her gags with like the aerial stuff. Was a friend of mine, and he I would always ask him, like, man, what's it like? He goes, oh, you're living on edge because you got your artist up there, but you have to run through all the safety tests and know what the gear and like all this stuff, and you have to have certain people up there trying it out before she gets up there. It's just like it's so surreal. It's like I the small part I can do on this podcast is just to highlight people that live that life. It's like for me,
Yeah.
it's so awesome.
And I've gone to a bunch of the Cirque du Soleil,
Oh,
shows, Vegas and every place. And you think about some of the stunts that they do
it's crazy.
twice a day. Are you out of your effing mind?
Right,
Some of that stuff is so, but when you look at the skill and the development that these people have done, and there is safety, more safety, I think, in some of the Cirque du Soleil than others. Um, but the expertise, when those people are doing what they're doing, this is what they do. For them, what we might do, for a living might be like, oh gosh, there's so much risk involved in working at an investment bank or
right,
there's always a level of expertise required to almost anything that anybody does. And if that particular thing is just so physical, and the downside of falling is so intense, that it just captures your imagination as a viewer. But for them, it's a very intense but very rewarding work. And I think Stunts was that way too. I never felt, well, I shouldn't say never, I rarely felt like my life was in danger doing stunts. And I think most stunt guys would tell you that, because we thought this out, and every bit of risk that we can remove from what we do has been removed. And so now I'm depending on me to do my job,
right.
and I'm not going to screw up.
Well, you mentioned like the Cirque du Soleil stuff. Like when you, Tony, or Lee, or that generation, when you first started, and you look at it now, you're kind of like, well, I'm sure the medical advice and recovery stuff has changed. The science of CTE and everything's come out, like how to protect the stunt workers better,
Yeah,
how to eat healthier because you got to do this certain thing. I mean, even stuff like back in the day, where it's even me growing up in the '80s, I wouldn't do stuff. I would fall. Who cares? Wake up next day. Now, if I were to fall, I'm feeling it the next day. So, what do I do physically and mentally to prepare myself to get through
yeah,
the next day and keep doing what I do? Because all that added stuff.
yeah. I mean, I have some stunts that I did that weren't even crazy stuff that I still suffer from. I got put in a clothes dryer, an industrial clothes dryer at a laundromat for a show, and every time that thing would spin upside down, I would fall and land on my head inside the stupid dryer. And I was in there for 3 solid minutes, a minute
Oh,
at a time. And I can't do a cartwheel anymore without being very, very dizzy. I can't do anything going backward. I was
oh,
never great with that, but now if I had to do a backward roll, yeah, I'm gonna get up. But look at my eyes and wonder where I am, because I'm like, whoa, everything's spinning.
right,
And that stunt really did that to me, And it's not like, well, gosh, your career of doing somersaults is ended. It's not like you're asked, you go through the rest of your life going, oh yeah, well, I'm going to go do some somersaults. But it did, I have some effects. I had some concussions, more than most people should have.
right.
Probably 7. That's a lot.
That's a
Most
lot.
football players, they wouldn't let you play anymore.
Correct.
So I came away with some damage, here and there. Most of the time when I got hurt, though, it wasn't from doing the stunt; it was from preparing. Um, I hurt myself, doing. I broke my wrist practicing working on a spot tramp. I got a concussion in karate class, doing fighting. So most of the stuff was more about, the lifestyle of staying in shape to
Right,
be a good stuntman. And we were pretty smart, I think. We again, I think we kept ourselves pretty healthy. The smart ones did, at least. I knew some guys who were just balls to the wall. Screw that preparation. Let's just
yeah,
light the candle. It's like, you're not going to survive like this.
yeah.
There's a big distinction that I talk about with the difference between a stuntman and a daredevil. Daredevil says, I'm going to ride my motorcycle through that wall of flames, and I'm going to be on fire. The bike's going to be on fire, and I hope I land it. Stuntman wouldn't do that. Stuntman's like, no, this is a well orchestrated, well designed stunt that I can do 4 times today if necessary, and nobody's going to get hurt.
Right,
The Daredevil says, I'm going to pit my balls to the wall attitude against a wall of flame and a blind landing. No, that's not a stunt. That's lunacy in my mind.
Right.
And so that's what I when people say, well, you were a daredevil. It's like, nah. There's a different definition there. Guy who blows himself up at the county fair,
Yeah,
that's a
that's
daredevil.
yeah.
You know.
He's got other issues underlying the
Yeah, and I'm not to say that there's anything wrong with what they do. I mean, those some of those guys are amazing, and some of them, some guys started doing that work and then moved into film. Um, but I think there's a different purpose. It's still entertainment, but one is to tell a story for a film or a television show. The other is to excite a crowd, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, some of those guys are badass
oh
and great, incredible athletes, but it's a different line of work.
yeah, it's just scary. I think it goes back to the whole evil Knievel thing. Like it takes a certain mindset, a brain capacity to decide that I'm going to ride my bike over this many trucks or cars, and I hope I
On that
land.
Harley.
Yeah, that's what's crazy about it. It's like it's just a
you know, you
oh
see these guys now. I mean, people are jumping distances Evil Knievel couldn't
oh
dream, but
it's
they're doing it on a bike
snowmobiles.
with a monoshock that can take,
Yep.
a 60-foot fall and still pad you reasonably well. Yeah, when you look at what the stunts he did on the gear that he used at the time, you think, are you insane? You know, why did you think this would work on a 1,200-pound bike? It's just, you're never gonna land it, and often he didn't. Yeah.
Let's as you kind of step away from the majority of stunt work and stuff. I know recently you put out a book, the novella by his hand. It's like, what was the writing process like for you? And was it a different type of excitement doing this book, like after you complete a really good stunt or a film? Like, how is it comparable in terms of what you put out?
That's a great question. I never dreamt that I would be a writer. I do some writing for professional
Yeah,
things that I do, but I had this nightmare, possibly the worst thing I could ever imagine. So vivid and so tactile, and that's this story in this book. I woke up and it was so stuck with me, and I remember, if you get a chance to read the book, it's very emotional, and I won't give away why, but it's just very personal. It's as if these things happened to me, because in the dream they did, and it's the worst things I could possibly imagine, the worst possible thing I could ever imagine. And so I was telling my wife, who's a psychologist, a little bit about it. She's like, "Don't tell me anymore."
you need to
And I
stop.
said, "Really?" She said, "This is this is really disturbing." And I said, "Oh." So I do audiobooks for a publisher in England, and he just sends me, book after book, and so I'm, fair voice actor, and I've read a lot of stories for him, probably 100 different stories, and so I think I had a sense of what the structure of these things needed to be, and the general storyline. And I wrote to him and I said, "Hey, I got this crazy idea," and he's like, "Wow, that's so scary." And I said, "Wow, he reads a lot of horror,
Yeah,
so it must be." And he said, "Are you going to write it? And I said, "I don't know. I'm no writer." And he's like, "Well, I'll write it." I said, "Great, go for it." So a month later, he still hadn't even started. And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to take a swing." I saw it so vividly in my mind,
yeah,
and uh, who could do it more, and the parts of it that are so upsetting to me, because so much of it was so real. And so I wrote it in about 2 weeks. Um, but I took a couple of breaks because there's a particular scene in this that is so emotionally
yeah,
horrible. And I even choke up thinking about it. Just even imagining it, even for a moment, I get this very, very disturbed feeling. And so it took a few days to write that scene. And if you get a chance to listen to it or read it, there's an app called Chilling. I don't know if you've ever heard of this.
yep.
It's basically like Spotify for horror stories. And if you go onto the app, you can actually listen to the story for free. Just those of you out there who might be interested, it's called By His Hand. And I did the audio book too. And it is so emotionally affecting that I didn't want to write anymore. It's like, screw this, man. This is too hard.
Yeah.
I don't want to think about this anymore. And you talk about Lee Waddell, Lee's good friend, and he read it and he said, "So what's part two?" And I said, "Dude, there is no part
Lee's
two."
crazy. Yeah, I love it.
I said, "I'm not putting myself through this again." And it was too much. It was very, very emotionally taxing. And he goes, "But what if?" And he gives me this idea, like, son of a bitch, that's great. Damn it. because now I got part two in my brain,
Yep.
you know, and some things that have happened in my personal life that that will fold into this just the way things from the original folded into it. And so the next story is just so freaking disturbing. And my friends are like, "You're so funny. Where does this stuff come from? You are a twisted mofo."
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I guess somewhere in me that exists. And so I really like the story as much as I hate the story. I think I managed to make it feel very real
Yep.
because it felt so real to me when I wrote it. I hope that comes across, and the reviews have been pretty solid. So yeah, there's a lot to that that matters to me. And when my friends read it, they're like, Jesus, so much of this is true. I'm like, yeah, all
Yep.
the murdery stuff's not true,
Yeah.
but everything else is, you know. And I said, and my reaction to what happens to these characters is very real, because these are actual real people. Everybody in the story is a real person.
Right.
And they're like, wait, am I Emerson? I'm like, you're Emerson. And they're like, you did me wrong, bro. I'm like, sorry, man. When they read it, they're like, this hits really hard though, when you know there's a lot of a big part of the storyline is pain.
Yeah.
And I have arthritis, and it sucks. I can't play guitar anymore. There's a lot of things I haven't been able to do since the arthritis took over, and I have a spine problem that's genetic that just started up about age 40. And so all of these things are very real. And so when I talk about them in the story, people who know me go, dude, that shit's real.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're like,
Well, I think some of the
I
best
didn't realize.
horror comes from real places, which is why I love
Yeah.
like Clive Barker and I know Wes
Yeah.
Craven, Stephen
And Wes,
King. It's
yeah.
like, yeah, it's like it's coming
Wes
from a
told
place.
Wes told me some very deep, dark stories about how Freddie came to be Freddie, why the hat, why the glove, why the sweater. And he tells the original story of being in a room looking out the window, and this man is staring at him,
Ugh.
and he had a very very Freddy look to him, when you see the movies. And he said he was terrified just instantly, just oh my gosh. And so he stopped looking out the window, and went and had dinner. And about an hour later he goes up to his room, and he just looks out the window, and he's still there,
Ugh.
and he's still staring, and he is it's like he never stopped looking. And it just scared the crap out of Wes. He said it was probably one of the most frightening moments, of his adolescence. And it was he didn't do anything, he was just there,
Right.
and he had that look and that hat. And he said so when he was coming to design the character, this very real moment from his childhood, you know, informed how he did it. And I think what Wes would tell you is that things that scare you as a child scare you as an adult. You've just learned to deal with it.
Yeah.
And when I was writing my story, my wife said, "Do you want to know where this all comes from?" And she's a psychologist, and I said, "Yeah." And she said, "It's part of your fear of death and fear of dying like your mother did."
Ugh.
And my mother passed away from dementia, and she said, "You're afraid of becoming someone you don't know, and
Yeah.
that
Powerful.
that person is hurting the people that you care about the most in your life." And it was, of course, shook me massively, like, holy crap, that's true. And she said, so what are you going to do with the story now? And it changed the way I was going to write the story, because all of a sudden it's like, if that's the impetus from, from my heart, my brain, where would this go?
Yeah.
And how much worse would it be, and what mayhem would be involved? And I love writing me some mayhem. So it really changed the way I wrote, and it changed the way I'm going to write. And when I finish part two, um, because it's so much more intense now, and I recognize what I'm afraid of, and that what I am afraid of, you're probably afraid of too. These are
Right.
very
Yeah.
universal themes. And so I'm going to take that thing that we're all afraid of, and I'm going to make it so much worse.
It's awesome.
I'm gonna make it so real and so visceral, that you can't avoid it. And so then when you read it, you're gonna be like, Jesus, dude, you just tapped into this part of me I don't
Right.
even want to look at.
Yeah. No, it's awesome.
Welcome.
How fun has it been for you doing the convention circuit? I know you've been out there. I mean, it seems like it's every actor I've talked to on the podcast that does them regularly. They're just like they have no idea the impact, whether it's their stunt or their movie or whatever they did in that create a costume prop, that how it positively affected their lives or
Yeah.
saved their lives. It's like that's why I love those conventions. It's like for me, it's I feel like a kid the whole day because I'm surrounded by the people that inspired me to be who I am today, and just seeing the joy of other people dressing up in these crazy costumes. It's
Oh
it's
yeah.
it's aw- it's pure bliss.
They're the most passionate. I mean, I did some Star Trek, and so I kind of
Yeah, that
hoped that
fan base.
I hope down the line I can get into some Trekkie, conventions. But mostly it's been horror. In fact, well, entirely it's been horror. And there's such a passionate crowd. And I will have people come to me and say, Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is my favorite film of all time. And I'm like, dude, get out and see some movies. There are plenty of films out there that I think are better made and better written.
Of
Like
course.
that movie was the first time my dad took me to a horror film.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
It's
the,
attached to something emotional.
yeah, or, I was sitting next to this girl that I was really into, and we went to the movie together, and she got scared, and, she hugged me. And it was this moment that I recognized, that maybe she and I were, going to be getting together. And so, there was just, sometimes these movies have a place in someone's life.
Yep.
And I used to be a little bit, I don't want to say embarrassed, but I was certainly not proud of my horror films because, when we were doing them, it's like, well, this isn't going to win any Oscars.
Right.
Somebody comes by with a 5-gallon tub of blood, you're not making Citizen Kane. So I was a little bit, just was like, yeah, I did a lot of films, but I didn't really do anything memorable. And here we are 35, some years later, some of these movies, and people are like, dude, it is such an honor to
Yeah.
meet you. And they use the word honor. And I'm like, hey man, I'm just Bill,
Yeah.
um, I live in a nice little suburban house and I had a great career, but they're not to them. To them, it's like, dude, you were part of so many films that were just part of my childhood and my adolescence. They changed the way I thought about the world. I mean, I survived my childhood watching them survive Freddy or
Yeah.
watching them, you know, and that impact on them is profound. And when they tell you you were part of that, gosh, if that doesn't make you feel good,
Yeah.
it's like somebody saying, the first baseball game I ever went to with my dad, you hit this home run and it was the best day of my life. Now your home run, as the baseball
It's
player,
nothing to
was
him.
just part of a wonderful part
Correct.
of their experience.
Yep.
And so when I get to do these conventions, my wife and kids are so tired of hearing all my stuntman stories. They couldn't possibly be more bored with it. So the idea that someone comes up to me and says, Mr. Perry, and they're calling me Mr. Perry out of respect, not because I'm so damn old. Um, they're, they really are excited to meet me, and that makes me excited to see them because I'm a fan too. When I ask them, so, what's your favorite scary movie? Not just to play, the line from Scream, but what is your favorite scary movie? And they're like, oh, Lost Boys. Was it great to work on Lost Boys? Like, it was great to work on Lost Boys. That was the hippest, coolest, you
Oh,
know,
great film.
horror movie of its day, other than
Yep.
maybe American Werewolf in London.
Yep.
Got that one too. But I recognize, what? I do have a bit of a legacy of film history, and it is something to be proud of. Don't people love these movies? Nobody's, coming to me and asking about, some of the other movies that I did that weren't genre, horror films. They're still there, and I'm not unhappy with them, but these movies meant something, and I didn't understand that for the longest time. And I do these events now, and it's like being on the set again. I'm just a happy little puppy dog. People are like, "Hi, Bill." It's like, "Hi, who are you?" And the energy just comes out of the common love of
Yep.
films. And if I can give them a little Easter egg they didn't know about, from a movie, if I can do something that helps enhance their enjoyment of the film the next time they watch it, oh, that's worth everything. And
I like what some of these actors now. I think Lee did one where he actually dresses up as like Ghostface or
yeah.
the characters they portray. But like, how cool would it be if you got to play that zombie bully again
Oh
with a
gosh,
screwdriver? Like that's it's such an iconic.
that's a great idea.
It's such an iconic like horror thing growing up as a kid for me. I'm like, man, this is such a cool to be with the actor that played this person in the actual
Yeah.
picture in 2023. It'd be awesome.
Well, it's funny. One of the things I bring to one of the cons I happen to have here on my little desk is a Freddy glove,
Yeah.
and this is made by the guy who makes them for uh, for Robert Englund. I got one just because that'd be a fun little memorabilia thing, and I brought it to a show one time, and the guy's like, "Can I wear it in our picture?" Absolutely. He's like, "Are you serious?" It's like, well, of course,
Yeah.
and he was like, "Oh, this is the best thing ever. The best thing ever. The guy that got killed by Freddy, and I'm the guy now, and I get to wear the glove, and I get to." It's like,
It's
it's
great.
such a little thing, it's such a just a this little moment, but for them to be attached to that movie history is a big deal,
Yeah.
And I recognize, and it's some guys don't want to do conventions because they're like, oh, I'm not, makes you look like some sort of has been trying to relive their glory days. I'm like, if so, I'm absolutely comfortable with that,
Right.
because this, I'm a fan of these movies. I watch them too. And
Yep.
so when people are telling me about their favorite part from a film, I get to relive it the way they get to relive it when they're talking with me,
Yep.
and they're so passionate and they're such kind people. There's a few freakazoids out there. But hey, man, it's time.
Bring
Let
it
your freak
on.
flag fly, baby. When these people do cosplay every weekend, and I see a
Oh,
lot of the same
it's
people at pop-ups and signings and cons, they're just having fun. Sometimes these people have, mundane lives, and this little thing about getting to dress up as Freddy or Ghostface or, whoever, this adds joy to their life that gives
yeah.
them something fun to look forward to. I'm not going to take that away from him and go, you know, you weren't really in the movie. Oh, come on, man. Let these people have their fun. And if I can help enhance that fun and go, hey, let
Yeah.
me tell you something about Freddy you wouldn't know, or let me tell you something about Ghostface you wouldn't know, or whatever the
Yeah.
tidbit of information that I've got. When I give that to them, it's giving them a gift that takes nothing from me,
Yep.
but gives them something, and that's the whole experience of doing conventions. I'm not there to sign pictures. I'm there to help people enjoy a film
Yeah.
again that they enjoyed
And to your
before.
point, like when I love the movie Predator, and so every time an actor like Jesse Ventura or Eric Chavez or someone else, Carl Weathers, will do like an interview recently, they'll throw like a new tidbit out there that I never knew about the movie Predator. And it just makes me love that movie so much more now because it's like
Yeah.
hearing the little details about, oh, that one day it rained at craft services and made a flood, and all of a sudden we start arm wrestling. I'm like, what? Like this now
Yeah.
I get it's just awesome.
Well, and you see that how the things that happen on the set inform the film and make the film
Correct.
better, and the partnership and the friendship of the actors who play people who have to now protect each other for their lives. It makes the movie better,
Yeah.
and like I got to work with Kevin Peter Hall, and
Oh,
I was talking to
legendary.
Kevin, and he's solidly 2 foot taller than me. I mean, if in the shoes and the suit and everything, maybe 2.5. And just one day he's kind of sitting next to me and his legs are extending into the next county, and he looks at me and he says, what's it like to be short? And I said, yeah, uh, I never really thought about that. I said, it's fine. What's it like to be ridiculously tall? He goes, it's dirty.
Oh,
Nobody cleans the top of the door. Nobody cleans the top of their refrigerator. Nobody does.
yeah.
Nobody cleans up here. So when you're 7'5", and 7'6", you see the top of everything. And it made me want to get my maid to clean the top of the refrigerator because I don't know what it looks like up there. I've never seen it.
Right.
And it just gave me this affection for this man that his life is different from mine on a basic level, you know. But he was a very cool guy, and what he'd like to call as an action actor, or a because he didn't have lines per se, but everything that he did
Physical. Just.
was very, very well thought out from an actor's perspective. He's not just a guy in a suit, And Lee would tell you when he wore the ghost face mask that Wes came to him and said, "I want you to move like a spirit.
Yep.
I want you to be formless. So whatever you can do to give me that." So now you look at yourself as a stunt person, not just being the guy that got hit in the head with a 2x4. You are the guy that embodies this monster, this demon, this whatever it is, and that's where the real fun of it comes into it. And so when somebody comes to me and they say, "So, when you were making this movie, what was the direction? When you're getting killed by Freddy, what's the I asked the director, so what do you want from me? What is this supposed to look like? Um, and they would tell you very specifically. And so you are an actor. And
Yeah.
so when somebody will ask me that question and I tell them, oh, Wes said this, they're like, when they watch that movie the next time with their friends, they're like, okay, 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 okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Pause it.
That
Pause it
guy,
here.
that
Yeah.
guy, he told me that Wes told him this, and it adds a new level of enjoyment for them to watch the film because they get to tell their friends
Yep.
something that they didn't know too. And that little tidbit finds its way, around the universe. And to be able to give that to somebody is this tiny little, it's just words from me. It's just a fun story from me. But for them, it changes the way that they look at their films, and their favorite films are better now because they have a better understanding
Yeah.
from the very guy who got killed by Freddy,
Right.
you know? And so to be able to give that away, uh, you know, 50 times a day, 3 days in a row, 20 weeks out of the year at conventions, that's just joy,
Yep.
and for the people who don't want to do that and they're like, nah, meeting new people makes me anxious. Don't do it because you really want to. I really love giving these people an experience they just can't get any other way. And it's in the entertainment industry. I'm still in the business this
Yeah.
way. And my job is to make sure they come away from that table going, that was so much fun.
Yeah.
And I hope I do that.
Yeah.
I really hope people walk away feeling like they got to be a part of the movie just by knowing a little more from that guy, who had a minor but significant role,
Yeah.
in making it.
Before I let you go, kind of talk me through maybe what advice you have to offer, like an actor that's kind of going in Hollywood entertainment world now, that's going through the SAG strike, and what would it like be back in the day if this was happening when you're in the 80s and 90s with you? Like, how would that have affected you? And like, what advice do you have to these people that are striking for what
Well,
seems like a right reason?
oh, absolutely is the right reason. And it's unfortunately this is a horse we let out of the barn a very long time ago,
Right.
and didn't start looking for him for 10, 15 years. Back in the day, just here's an example. You would do a television show, and maybe 6 months later they would do a rerun, and for that rerun you got paid the exact same amount of money that you got paid the first time you did it, which is golden because now for every $1,000 you make another $1,000. So the union has a certain amount of money that you need to make every year in order to get benefits, and it's not insignificant. Right now I think it's around $26,000, $27,000. And you think, well, if you're such a big high paid movie star, you should be able to get there pretty quick. Well, residuals are usually what help you get there because if you're lucky, you work maybe a dozen times a year, dozen days a year. If you're lucky, if you are badass fortunate, right? Well, now because of streaming, there is no second residual or first residual that comes to the amount that you used to make, for the job. So maybe you make $1,000 for the day, but your first residual check is $200. Your next residual check is $2. The next residual check is 4 cents. How are you going to get to $26,000 to make just basic health care that every human being needs just to,
Yeah.
not be absolutely devastated by a kidney stone or something
Yeah.
mundane. And it's the same in the music industry. I mean, you're big but friends with a lot of these, rock stars. Rock stars used to tour to support an album. Now they put an album out so they have something to do when they tour because the only money you make is touring.
Yeah. And
And
merchandise.
so
Yeah.
yeah, and merch, yeah. But the difference now, it's like everything got flipped upside down. And now you've got people who have, a billion streams on Spotify getting $2,000 for a billion listens. Really? Or you do a film and you find out, okay, this is going to be on Netflix, and Netflix promotes the most watched film on Netflix or the hottest film
Yeah.
on Amazon, and then you get a residual check for $40. Well, if you're able to sell your streaming service based on the popularity of this television show or your catalog, and they know exactly how many hours have been watched. In the old
Correct.
days, you only had ticket sales to tell you that, and you might have Nielsen ratings to tell you, okay, that movie did, or that television show did better than this television show, and you'd get, because what they do is when they take all this money, they go, okay, here's $100 million that this film made. We're gonna divide that up amongst the actors and the people who are in the unions, and producers and that sort of stuff. And SAG and there people get this little portion. Well, that portion has become almost nothing because they're saying, well, it's on streaming. Who knows how much money it'll make? You know exactly how much money it's going to make. You know exactly how much money it has
Correct.
made because you know exactly how many viewers saw it and when they saw it, and you can name them. You could say,
Yeah.
Bill Perry watched
Yeah.
this.
You can
I know it for
email them.
certain.
Yeah.
He watched the first 32 minutes. He went to go get a sandwich and he came back because my
Correct.
Alexa told me that he also ordered a sandwich. So they know, but the money that can be made has become so limited. I mean, a good friend of mine, Ira Hayden, is one of my actors that I doubled on a few shows.
Oh
He's
yeah.
still out there, and I saw him on the picket lines the other day, and he had told me, we're striking because as a working actor, you now struggle. And I'm saying a working actor. I'm not saying somebody who comes to Hollywood, wants to be an actor, never makes it in the guild. I'm saying somebody who's got their union card,
Yeah.
who does voiceover, who does acting, who does this. Somebody who works at half a dozen times a year cannot make $26,000. Why would you go into a business that you can't make any money?
You wouldn't.
You know, I mean, you're working jobs, slinging dog food on the shelves at Vaughn's tonight because you're just trying to make sure that you're just trying to keep your career alive because that's who you are and that's what you do. But back in the day, I hate to say times were better, but they were. You know, I get residual checks now based on the old contracts, so I still get money for stuff, but it's a trickle. But that trickle is now it's a trickle because it was 30 years ago. The trickle that it is now is almost
No.
none. There's no
Ugh.
DVD sales. There's no VHS sales. There's no VHS rentals. There's no. Now it's all just in these boxes.
Yep.
And the people who control those boxes are saying, "Oh, we only got a $40 million, performance bonus this year, so we just don't have it. You guys have to be reasonable." Screw your
Yep.
reasonability.
Right.
You know, and that's true of Spotify, and that's true of Netflix, and all those guys. My blood just boils when I think about how hard it is for somebody to just make a basic living
Yeah.
doing something that we all enjoy. I mean, think about it. How many, and I know I'm just rattling on, but think about how many shows you watched during COVID when you were,
Oh, I watched every
yeah,
movie franchise at least 100 times. Like,
stars were made. People who were not big movie stars became movie stars. In
yeah.
those days, and when you find out some of those people cannot make basic rent, and didn't make enough to make enough money to pay for basic health insurance, you could
Right.
work at freaking Walmart and do better. And then I'm sure there are people out there who would say, well, then why don't you just work at Walmart? Because that's not who I am and it's not what I do. And you don't want me working at Walmart. You want me making a movie because you
Right.
want to
That's
watch Netflix and you want
right.
to
It's
watch
like
Hulu.
who do we to say you can't follow your passion and get paid
Yeah.
what you are owed or what you deserve based on, I mean, it's
Yeah.
just, so how do you think this ends? Like who calls the
Oof.
bluff first?
I'll tell you what's going to happen from my opinion.
Yeah.
Back in 1960, there was this thing called television. And the movie theaters and the movie studios said, we don't know what's going to happen with this. It might be nothing. Television may just be a passing fad. But by 1960, everybody knew. And the Screen Actors Guild and the Writers Guild said, that's it until you give us a deal that takes into account all the revenue that's going to be generated by television. We aren't working. The sort of good bad news is that right now movies, I mean, people are doing the Barbenheimer.
Yep.
They bought tickets for both and they saw them both the same day, and both films are making hundreds of millions of dollars, which is lovely. Nothing wrong with a film making money. I'm not anti
Correct.
making money, but those now they've got enough money they can sit on it for a while and say, let's wait them out. When these guys get hungry enough, they'll come back to the table. And fortunately, there's some really good people out there that are dumping just as much money into the SAG-AFTRA strike funds and helping these people get through it because it's just unfair. It's unfair to an extreme it's unprecedented. You
Well,
know,
it's like I heard The Rock donated like 7 8 figures to the fund, and some people are like, well, he made 50 million in one movie alone. It's like he should be donating more. It's like, well, hold on a second. He's doing more. Like even if he gave $1, that's more than some other people gave. And it's like, who are we to say he gave. It's like other actors
Yeah.
gave money
and
or
and he may give more. He may
correct.
give more down the line. I mean, when COVID first hit, yeah, I threw out a few bucks. I worked a couple of weekends at a food bank, but as the things got worse and worse and worse, I did more.
Yeah.
And I'm not bragging about that. I'm just saying that as
No,
you
no,
see the news,
it's
who knew this thing was going to go on so long? But the actors and the producers and the folks that I've talked to that are still in the game said, I'm in this for the long haul. If this takes a year, screw them. If
it's
we have to bleed
crazy.
them dry.
You look at that timeline where for 2 to 3 years, there's no new projects coming out. I mean, they would rush through like the Tiger King stuff for like Netflix or whatever. But
Yeah,
all
yeah,
that 2, 3 projects, we're now finally kind of like pre-COVID with people going to the movies again, like big box office
right.
numbers. Here comes another year of nothing. It's like it's like you're all hurting everyone.
Yeah, yeah, and and the actors, of course, they want to work.
Yeah,
There's nobody in this that's, it's not like this is striking coal miner. Well, I mean, I hate to say put any but it's not like these are people who make ridiculous amounts of money and they're just being greedy. I mean, when you hear that a stunt person or an actor makes $1,000 a day, you go, "Wow, that's a lot more money than I make." But remember, that may be the only day they work this month. They may work 2, 3 days a
yeah,
month, and
that's the
so
first movie in
3 days is
months.
only $3,000. And rents, out here in LA, $3,000 won't get you a refrigerator box on you know out in the boonies. It's
Right.
it's just an expensive place to live, and so and you can go wah wah wah. Why should I care? Because we're the people that make the movies that you enjoy. We're the
Correct.
people that are sacrificing and working and have unique skill sets that maybe not rest of the world has. And the people that are at the top of this food chain are going, well, they just don't understand. If you got a $40 million bonus this year, you don't understand.
Correct.
You know, you can't possibly understand. I mean, I know in the music business, there are people who will be sidemen and they're doing a big tour, and then you find out that that side guy made $400 a show. It's like that guy's an amazing guitarist. He's working so hard. My son's a professional drummer,
Yep.
and so he goes out and he does great gigs and he does crappy gigs because he doesn't know where the gigs are going to come from or when they'll stop. And
Yep.
so he does. Some nights he's working for $50. Some nights he's working for 600 to 1,000 to $2,000. Um, it's a difficult life, and yes, you want to be able to see these people play, but these people need to make a decent living.
Yeah.
My son's been playing drums for something like 21 years. He's only 29, and somebody's like, oh, how about you guys play here for exposure? Screw your exposure.
Yeah.
Do you ask the restaurant to give you a bunch of food and say, yeah, but I promise you I'll tell everybody about it?
Correct.
People that are artists that are working in this, um, yes, there are the Rock and there are the Schwarzeneggers and there are these people who make millions and millions of dollars film, but that is not what the strike is about. Obviously,
Correct.
the strike is about guys like me, who are going to work maybe 15, 20 times a year and just want to make enough to eat and have
Right.
decent health and be able to do the job that they love. Um, and there are people who are making ridiculous amounts of money who say, you know what, if we just bleed these guys dry, when they lose their health care, believe me, they'll come back to the table.
Right.
Wow. Is that the way you want your world, to be handled? It doesn't have to be that way. These people could just be a little more understanding and say, let's make sure that, people who do this job on a day-to-day basis, the character actors and the stunt people, can make enough that this is a viable career. And
Right.
it's like when you find out that somebody who's working full time at Walmart is also on food stamps. You're like, well, if you're working full time, why do you need food stamps? Because Walmart doesn't pay me very much, and they
Correct.
won't give me enough hours. So this is the only way I can afford to feed my family. I'm not. It's not that I don't want to work. It's that they pay so little that I can't eat. Well, that's not fair.
Right.
You know, billion-dollar companies that make that where they've got people that are still you know having to get public assistance because they don't pay enough. There's something wrong there, and
Yeah,
I'm
there
not trying to
is.
vilify big companies, but there's a disparity there that isn't necessary, and some people are suffering while other people are unaware of that suffering.
Right.
And the guild, everybody thinks, well, but this is movies, this is La La Land. It is, and there's so many great things about it. But I think this strike's probably going to go at least a year. I think
Oof,
that's going to be a
crazy.
long time because people are digging trenches and they're buckling up and they're like, I'll eat rice 3 meals a day for the next year if it means that we can
Right.
make this work properly for the next decade or two.
Crazy. Well,
I can get off
William,
my soapbox now. Gosh,
no,
stuff.
I love it because it's you always read
Being on a
this.
soapbox makes me 5'7", so it's a good thing for me.
For someone that's not in the industry, for like myself, I'm very. It's when you read all these articles and stuff about all this. Like, I don't like an article that tells you to pick a side. I like the articles or like it puts everything out there and let me decide. I mean, obviously, I know where I
Yeah,
sit on this thing, but it's just like
yeah,
that was the. I wish more people could. They will hear this episode, but they'll understand. You laid it out in a way where now I get why they're doing what they're doing.
yeah, and it's not even about picking sides. It's just understanding what, um, if you can look at it and you can say, well, clearly this isn't fair. I think
Correct.
anybody who looks at the situation is going to say clearly this isn't
Right.
a long-term viable solution. How do we make this right? What would work? And it's not like everybody wants to be millionaires. Some people just want to do their job. Well, everybody wants that. And when somebody says, well, why is there a grocers union? Why are there, you know, why are there any of these unions? It's just to make sure that everybody's well taken care of, and that um, they can live that American dream we all talk about. I'd like to buy a house. I'd like to be able to get married and not have to have everybody in my family work, and it's all the same things. Actors and stunt people and craftsmen, and we're all in the same boat. We all just
Right.
want the same thing. I'm not trying to uh, break anybody over the coals. So what's the solution? Well, they'll find it, at some point soon. They'll say, okay, Netflix, Hulu, Paramount, Peacock, HBO Max, all those things. We're all going to have to share in the responsibility to make sure that these people can make decent amount of money.
Yeah,
That's all.
which is smart.
And that's what'll happen. But everybody says, well, if we bleed them dry first, we'll get the best possible deal. Ouch. God,
Yep.
that's just not necessary.
Yep.
We could go to the tables today and just say, look, this is where this is going to end. This is a fair deal. Everybody knows this is fair. Why can't you let's just get back to work?
Right.
Let's get back to the fun part of making movies and making people happy. And my daughter went to see Barbie and just talked about what a wonderful film experience it was to be in a theater with a bunch of people who all laugh at the same time and who
Yep.
all are affected at the same time and who get the message that was unexpected from a Barbie movie, and uh, that's the fun and that's the joy of this. And that's what I want to get back to. And I just hope that, cooler heads will prevail and there won't be, they'll say, you know what, we're going to get to this point in a year anyway. Let's just get back to work. We can all make more, if we
Right.
all just join in and are invested in what we're doing.
Well, William, this has been great. Thank you for the time talking today, and
Oh, my pleasure. Always.
awesome stuff. And I feel like I'm gonna go watch Predator 2 here shortly, just because I
Please
love
do.
that
But
movie so
if you do,
much.
could you rent a DVD?
Yeah, I'm gonna go in
We'll
my
find out a
local
Blockbuster.
Blockbuster. Yeah.
God, I'm so old.
I wish that stuff came back. Cause I mean, I collect VHS, and so anytime I go to like a yard sale or like like these kind of like pop culture stores, I'm always
Yeah.
buying VHS and stuff. I just even
Yeah.
Laserdisc too. Like I just
I I wonder if it's possible in a way because I'm a vinyl guy. I go
yeah
back to that, and I have some old vinyl, and I have a record player. And my son is much more of an audiophile than I am, and he went out and I guess this was the first year ever that vinyl outsold CDs. Now, not like CDs are any great joy either. Everybody's listening to music in some electronic
right.
fashion, but hey, there are people who are making vinyl because it's profitable.
Well, it's
I would
like
love to find out there was a way that we could go back to renting, or buying an actual, film and owning it
yeah,
in
the
such a way.
that's why Generation Z. There's an article I don't know if it was Spin Magazine or something recently where Generation Z, like people notice in music have uptick in like the new metal, which would have been like the Mudvayne, Slipknot, all these bands that came out in the early '90s, Limp Bizkit, where the sales are going through the roofs because Generation Z's basically said, "F you, we're gonna listen to what we think is cool now or what we want to listen to,
Yeah,
and not have some hierarchy tell me that." Oh, now it's Americana and pop, or it's gotta be this type of
yes,
country. Listen to anything and watch anything you want. And I think
yeah.
that's what's gonna.
That's one of the things I love about music, and I've always loved about music is when you say to yourself, "Oh my God, this music is so tired and so stagnant." What that tells me is that the new thing is building.
Yep.
Somewhere in a garage
Yep.
are a bunch of dudes or a bunch of chicks that are going, "This is bullshit."
Yeah.
And we're going to change. I'm not listening to this crap. I'm
Yeah.
not going to have this overproduced, overhyped, you know, stuff. I'm going to put out real music again. And I love that about music. And it's because it's an evolution of, I'm tired of, there was like when I was a kid, metal was kind of a big thing, but then metal became so filled with cliches
Yeah.
that it was just no fun anymore. And then grunge came out.
Yep.
And then grunge was like, everybody in the world says they're from Seattle. And then that changed, and metal came back in a new way, and more of like a death metal and much more of a hard metal. And it was much more emotional and emo and then that changed, and I love to see the changes because sometimes it goes back, like I say, Americana came back, and I'm an old school guy, and I've been started listening to some bands. I'm like, oh shit, are these guys still together? This is a great album.
Yeah.
And I go back and I go onto Spotify, which I will say I enjoy, and I pay for Spotify. Thank you very much. But I'll say, hey, show me some of their bands, the old '97s and the Jayhawks, and these guys.
Yeah.
These are great bands. Are they together still? Can I still go see them? Because I just discovered them. I know they may be 20 years old, but I just heard about them. God, I hope they're together. I
Yep.
hope they're coming out with some new music. So that's what I love about music. There can always be something new, and the boredom of today's contemporary music becomes the next thing. So it's good that we're getting bored with,
Yep.
you know, so many Ariana Grandes that you don't know the difference between them. At least that's sorry, Ariana Grande. I know you're listening, but the vocal gymnastic
Correct.
girl band has become
It
tired.
all
And
sounds the same. Yep.
yeah, and now hopefully that means that there's somewhere in a garage in Sandusky, Ohio, is a band that's going to change all that.
Yep.
At least I hope so.
Yeah.
Where are you?
I think we
Where,
all do.
we need to listen to them. But yeah, and I love that you get out, and I mean, I envy your ability to get out and be able to see these bands every night. I know you're working, but you get to listen. I know what
Yeah.
it's like working,
I try not
but
to. Yeah, I've found that I've enjoyed music more when I don't work, just because I appreciate the amount of work and stuff behind the scenes that goes into doing a live show. And so for me, I take it, I don't take it for granted. I mean, it could all end
but to be
tomorrow.
to be in the church of 40,000
Oh yeah,
rabid fans, singing the song
yeah.
with the band
With
and
kids
excited.
singing every lyric or old folks singing
Yeah,
every lyric, it's like it's pretty
that
astounding.
energy is yeah that when people say how come so many rock stars become drug addicts, it's like, can you imagine
You can't get off that
living like
high.
this
Yeah.
for 2 years and then being off the road for a while, and how do you get that back,
Yep.
not that I'm advocating drug use, but I certainly it's not, I don't advocate it, but I understand it.
Yes. Totally. Well, this has been great, William. I appreciate your time, and
Oh, my pleasure.
we'll have to do it again soon.
Yeah, and what we got to do, we got to get you and me and Lee Waddell and a few other stunt guys, and get in here and and compare and contrast some of the bullshit you've heard from the real truth that I just told you.
Yeah, well, I do want to get Tony out here eventually. Lee's been trying to set
Oh,
up,
wait.
just because it's like that's like a trifecta for me. Like every movie growing up as a kid
Oh,
is like
he's
it's one of
loyal.
you three people in that movie doing something.
Yeah. Tony was there for so much of Wes's initial and long-term genius. He worked with him in the moment of that. I've got a handful of stories. Lee's got a handful of stories. But when you work 18 movies with
Yeah,
somebody
it's
and watch their creative process day to day, you just learn so much. And Tony and he were both also quite close friends. They played racquetball all the time, so they weren't just work friends; they were real friends. And so he's a great guy to talk to. And he gave me my start. He gave Lee his start. He gave dozens of people. He's just one of those people that was very open to helping new talent develop. And I owe Tony just everything. So yeah, if you get him on there, but it's also just fun to get two or three of us in the room because the stories begin to
no, I love
flow,
it. We'll
and
do it.
it's a great laugh.
We'll do it. Well, thank you again, sir.
All right, man. Thank you.
Oh, hello. I'm just enjoying this nice fucking candle. Anyways, I'm John, the host of Spirit Talk, and I want to talk to you about nice fucking candles. We are lucky to have Nice Fucking Candles as a sponsor of the podcast. And if you use code SpearTalk15, you get 15% off your first order, or use the affiliate link below to always get your candle needs through Nice Fucking Candles. Nice Fucking Candles are 100% soy wax. They have a 65-hour burn time, maybe more if you nurse the flame a little bit. Maybe, I don't know, I'm not an expert on flames or candles, but I will say these things burn a long fucking time. You ask me about the wick. It's a double wick for even burning, which is amazing. And they come in 3 incredible flavors. I'm not sure if you're going to be eating these candles, but if you do like them, the scents are eucalyptus and ginseng, tobacco and fireside, and seaside and driftwood. Once again, Nice Fucking Candles. They are the candle company for Spirit Talk. And if you love candles and need a good scent to clear out your office, your room, your podcast room, your weight room, your whatever you're doing in a room that smells like crap, use this candle. It's amazing. Thank you. Check them out. Love Nice Fucking Candles.